and welcome back to another episode of the Mental Well, where we talk about our stuff so we don't have to carry it with us through life. Not only carry it with us, but pass it on to our kids. I want
Yes, we want to make sure that we are stopping things in their tracks, making sure that we are not passing along all of our trauma and our junk. We can deal with it as adults now, that we have our adult brains can handle what they've got, and then we're done. And then the kids don't have to deal with it. We can start a new legacy.
And that's why I love this show. And I especially love, so thank you again for being here. I especially love the deep dives.
Yes.
Because, a lot of these things that we talk about, it takes a minute to get there, right? Like it requires kind of a deeper conversation. So I appreciate you being along for the ride. And today is another one of those days. This to me is a really big topic. So I'm going to let you kind of take it away and explain a bit about what today's episode is about so that people sort of have a baseline to start with.
Okay, for sure. Yeah, today is a big topic. So we're talking about attachment. We're talking about attachment trauma.
Pairing.
And we're talking about how our attachment wounds and our own attachment injuries get activated when we are parents, and how that interferes with our ability to attune to and relate with our kids. Because when we have our own childhood needs unmet, then we can start to resent and really have a visceral body and mind reaction to our kids having their needs. And we don't want to meet their needs. We think to ourselves, why do you deserve it when I didn't get it? Or, and we might not be consciously thinking that, but like it's happening inside of us, right? And so it can make it really hard for us to see our kid as a hurt child when they're having a temper tantrum, and not take it personally all the time. And not, want to dismiss them and withhold love and affection from them when they're not behaving well.
Mm-hmm. And these things that happened to us in the past, correct me if I'm wrong, they create kind of patterns of thought, right? Like beliefs that, like you mentioned, may not be at the forefront. We may not be thinking as we're reacting to whatever situation is happening, oh, I didn't get this, so, I'm not going to give it to you. Or why do you deserve it more than I did? Or that kind of thing, right? It can just be a tape that we're running without really knowing it.
Yeah, these are automatic thoughts. These are automatic responses that are happening internally that are not conscious. They're not in our conscious awareness. We're not saying like, oh, I don't love my kid, I don't care about my kid. But our body and our brain aren't connecting on that same conscious cognitive level. And we're running this survival strategy of just being okay and trying to calm everything down and just trying to get relief. And so that puts us in a position where we're not able to be the calm, confident leader that we need to be with our kids. Instead, we are reverting back to our childhood ways of throwing our own temper tantrum, of screaming back, of getting into a power struggle, of running away, or of wanting to just disappear into our own self and not have to deal with this other person. Those are our childhood strategies, right? When I'm frustrated, what did I do when I was a kid? I would run into my room and slam my door. So if as an adult, my childhood attachment needs are activated, then I'm going to want to run away. I'm going to want to avoid the situation. I'm going to want to ignore the child and push them away. And I think, going back, like, I don't know that everybody really understands like what is attachment and how important it is,
Yeah.
Attachment is the single most important survival mechanism that we have as babies. So attachment is the connection between a child and a caregiver. Attachment is the knowing that as a helpless child, there's someone there who's going to meet my needs and keep me alive, basically. And so as an infant, the only thing I have is my relationship with my caregiver to give me life. That's the only thing that I have in order to survive. And so that need is so strong and innate. It's built into our instinct as a human. In order to not die, we have to have this attachment. And when we have an attachment wound, that's like when we go to our caregiver and we say, hey, I need you. And they kind of slap us away. They're like, no, I don't want to take care of you right now, kind of thing. Mm-hmm. And that happened kind of over and over. Or if you were betrayed by an adult, like think of childhood abuse, or especially like childhood sexual abuse. If you're betrayed by the adult that's supposed to be caring for you, that attachment wound is very, very deep. And it makes it so that you don't think that you can trust other people, and you don't think that you can care for other people because you're barely hanging on to caring for yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And so when we're in that moment of barely hanging on, trying to care for ourselves, that indicates that our attachment needs aren't met, and that we're reenacting this childhood strategy of like, I can't do this alone. I can't do this. I can't do this. I'm not enough. I'm not enough. And that's because as a child, that's true. You can't. And so when you have those feelings, that indicates that you're kind of stuck in this childhood strategy of trying to get your needs met. And that usually doesn't work well for adults.
Is that the same, or is that or is that how attachment styles develop? Are we talking about the same thing, or are we talking about like cart before the horse here?
No, that's absolutely how attachment styles develop. So you have different types of attachment styles in kids and adults. But like we've all heard of like anxious attachment, or we've heard of avoidant attachment, or a combination of the two, anxious, avoidant. And then we have secure attachment. Secure attachment means I have a stable person that I can go back to. I have a stable base. Like I can go back to this person and I can know that I'm going to get attention and attunement and my needs are going to be met. So that's secure, right? I am secure, and that makes me secure within myself. So when my caregiver is unstable, then I don't get that security. I don't have a stable base. I have an erratic base where volatility overrides stability. So if I go to that person, I don't know if I'm going to get screamed at or if I'm going to get a hug, or if I'm going to have them ask me to meet their needs. Right. And so if I have this, if I'm required to meet the needs of my adult, if my adult's needs come before mine as a child, then I'm going to most likely have an anxious or avoidant or both attachment style, because an avoidant attachment style is defending me against the rejection over and over and over. I'm getting rejected over and over and over. And so I'm going to develop an avoidant attachment style if my caregivers are rejecting, and if they don't meet my needs, if they push me away and say like, oh, you do need to do that yourself. Like you don't need me. You can do that yourself. Right? Those lessons that we're learning are going to make me avoidant of attachment. Or if my caregiver is unstable and dependent on me. So like how many adults depend on their kids' stability for their own stability?
Yeah.
So like I used to be this way, where I felt like I needed my kids to be okay in order for me to be okay. Mm-hmm. I thought that was true. I thought that I could only be okay if my kids are okay. And in theory, like that sounds true, right?
Right.
Like I need my kids to be okay for me to be okay. I'm not okay if they're not okay. But the reality is the opposite is true. I have to be okay in order for them to be okay. Mm-hmm. So I come first. I have to be okay first, because I'm the stability. I'm the life raft. Mm-hmm. And so if I jump out of the life raft and make sure that they're, and I'm worried that they're not okay, well, I just jumped out of the life raft. I'm not in it either. Right. I'm not stable either. And so they have to go, like you put your mask on first, all those things, right? So when you have an unstable adult who's dependent on you for stability, you develop an anxious attachment, right? I'm anxious all the time. I don't know. I need them to be close to me because I need to make sure they're okay all the time. I can't, like, when people are like, are you okay? Are you okay? Are you sure you're okay? Are you sure you're okay? Because you being upset makes me upset. I'm overly dependent. I need this person to be okay in order for me to be okay. That's a mirror image of my attachment style as a kid, right? So that's how all these attachment styles get developed.
So that is so interesting, and that's a lot.
Right?
And one thing that comes up for me, is a lot of times moms are super either nervous or insecure about, am I a good mom?
Right.
Am I providing that secure attachment? Right.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we get really, really nervous, and probably even the fact that you ask yourself that question, you're probably well on the road, right? Because someone who isn't probably wouldn't really care about that.
Mm-hmm.
But uh, with it, with developing the secure attachment, like that doesn't mean undisciplined, right? Like that
Right.
doesn't mean child can be irresponsible and it's like cool. Can we talk a little bit about that to kind of ease another mom's mind that maybe, she's not quite a mom yet, hasn't dealt with this yet,
Mm-hmm.
or maybe she has and she's feeling like we've both felt at times like, wow, I'm really screwing up my kid now. You know what I mean? Like how can we settle some of those nerves a bit?
Yeah, like what we have to know is that consistent, calm confidence is what builds that stable base. So my stability is the single most important aspect of their stability. So for example, if I have a kid who, let's say my kid doesn't get their chores done, and so they don't get screen time that day, right? So if that's the rule in the house, oh, we didn't get our chores done by 5, so we're not going to have screen time tonight. We still have to do the chores though, right? Now, if I change my mind and say, well, you were really good in all these other areas, so like, okay, you can have your screen time, but we'll do the chores tomorrow, right? That is not consistent. That's confusing.
Mm-hmm.
And so what that does is that activates this possibility in the kid that they won't have to have the consequence. So they're not learning. That's undisciplined.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's okay to it's okay for your child to get upset. So like, let's start there.
Yeah.
It's okay
It's hard,
for your
though.
child to be upset. It's so hard.
Yeah.
But kids get upset because they have a very small window of tolerance. They do not have a lot of coping mechanisms. They don't have a lot of feelings literacy. So when they do have a feeling, it's likely that they don't know what's going on in their bodies.
Mm.
And when they don't understand what's going on, that's confusing and chaotic. If I don't know what's going on in my body, like I'm going to be more upset, right? And so they have so much stuff going on, but they don't have any context for what's going on with them. They're getting mixed messages from us. If we're saying, well, you don't get your screen time, but if you ask me really nicely and you bring me ice cream, then I am going to give you your screen time, right? So now they're learning that they can control you through their behavior. But that's not true. We need to be the ones in control. So when I'm in control, I'm saying, hey, I know that it's a bummer to lose your phone. I don't want you to lose your phone. I want you to have it. I want you to have the screen time because I know you love it. And I can't wait for tomorrow where you can have your screen time. But if I didn't stick with what I said, then you would be confused, wouldn't you? So you deserve a mom who's going to be consistent and who's going to teach you that what I say, I mean. Because you need to know that I mean what I say. When I I won't break a promise to you, and I won't do this either, right? So this the same with the negative consequences as the positive consequences. We want to teach our kids that we are reliable and trustworthy and stable, and that we mean what we say and we care about what they're doing and how they're doing, because kids want to be taught. They want to be guided. They want to be led because they have no clue what's going on. They have no clue what the world is doing. They're looking to us to teach them about the world. And so the more teaching we do, the more consistent we are, then the better off our kids will be. They'll feel more secure And when they feel secure, they have fewer tantrums. They're respectful because they respect you, because you're respectable, right? If your kids don't respect you, think about, am I being respectable? Am I being consistent? Do I mean what I say? Am I breaking promises to this kid all the time? Because like, that's not respectable behavior. Let's be real. I'm not a super consistent person. Like I get like, it sounds like I'm being harsh, but like, I'm just being objective. Right? Like objectively, like you can imagine that like somebody who says they're going to do something, but they don't do it. Somebody who is inconsistent in their reactions to me, where half the time I'm in a bad mood and I'm like, get away from me. I don't want to deal with you right now. And then the other half the time I'm like, oh, I love you so much. You're the most important person to me in the whole entire world. Like give me a hug and a kiss and like make me feel loved and good. Like that's just not respectable behavior. So like when a kid doesn't respect their parent, it's often, we have to look at ourselves. Like, are we being consistent and calm and confident in our leadership of them? And are we being disciplined in our leadership of them? It's not about punishment. It's about discipline, which is about learning and about controlled responses to things, transactional responses, not emotional responses. Like, I'm not going to scream and yell about you not getting your chores done. I'm going to simply say, shoot, we didn't get this done in time. And so we don't get screen time. And then the kid's going to be like, what? I'm upset. Hey, it's okay to be upset. I get that too. You know, this is a bummer, but that's okay. We'll get it tomorrow. And we're going to do our chores tonight. We're going to do our chores right now.
So I smiled when you brought that up because I had literally just wrote it down. Because you had said the whole thing about, well, are you being respectful or respectable? You know what I mean? As you're communicating with your child. And it occurred to me, I've seen a lot of posts in our group and outside of our group. And it occurred to me that a lot of parents, their style does include yelling and screaming. In fact, I've been known to do it once or twice or
Totally.
so.
I'm a yeller for sure.
Right. And like, that's what happened to me. So, I mean, talking about the whole, our trauma thing kind of spilling over into our kids' lives. Yeah. Great example right there. And I know a lot of people are sort of, it's ingrained in them. Like there's like us, like it's kind of, they were taught that way. And it takes some work to come away from that. But that personally, I would consider from a child's perspective to not be respectable behaving like that. Because we certainly wouldn't want them to return fire, right?
Right. That's right. If you would get a timeout for it in kindergarten, it's not okay to do it as an adult. That's pretty much my rule. Like if you would get a timeout for yelling at someone or for screaming or for throwing things or for hurting someone else or for hurting yourself, like if it's not okay in kindergarten, it's not okay today. And that's like super simple. And don't get me wrong. Like this stuff is hard in action.
Right.
You know why? Because we have emotions and we're humans with nervous systems. And because we have 1,000 other things going on besides what's going on with our kid. Right. And so parenting is a lot of freaking work, man.
It is.
I thought that they kind of raise themselves and like, you just bring them along for the ride. Like you have them and then they do the things and then you show them stuff and then they do it. What was I thinking? That's not how it works. You have to actively engage with these kids like 1,000% out of your day and not multitask, because when you're multitasking, they're not going to listen to you. And so you have to stop what you're doing. You have to go to them and you have to engage with them in a way that is difficult and is frustrating because they're not always in a good mood. Because sometimes they woke up on the wrong side of the bed, or sometimes they stubbed their toe, or they lost their homework, or they have some other thing going on that we don't even know about. They can't wear their green shirt.
Yeah, I mean, the teenagers, my God, they have hormones and all the things. So yeah,
mood swings, everything. So it's hard to interact with a person like that. It's not fun all the time. But, we have to recognize that like they're depending on us. Their stability depends on our stability. And so the most important thing for parents is to ground ourselves, like get ourselves stable, and then interact. And that doesn't mean to just like dismiss them when we're in distress. Like we have to work really hard at managing our distress.
Sure do. I have an example.
Really hard. Yeah, go ahead.
So I have a hard time when my son is upset also, but I'm doing better with that. And so this morning, he needed a little bit of help. Usually he just gets himself dressed, but he needed some help this morning. And so I went down to help him out, and I'm looking through his dresser, and one of his chores, it's a fairly new chore, it's been a few months, is like, I'll wash and fold your clothes, dude, but that's as far as I'm taking it. Like, you go from folded to dresser, and that's your responsibility. And we, worked on it together for a little bit, and then finally it's his responsibility. Oh, well. He must have wanted some clothes from the very bottom, because you can imagine what I walked into. I mean, everywhere. And this has not been our agreement. And I could feel, how you can just kind of like, it's morning and you have 1,000 other things going, you're tired, and I could like feel the fire, And so I just looked at him, because I really didn't want to start the day off like that. And I'm really working on, being better about staying within my window that we've discussed before. And so I just looked at him, and I said, I gotta walk away. And when I come back, I'd like to see this the way I expected to see it the first time. But I was so mad, and he could like see it in my face, so of course he got upset too, but I was so proud that I was able to do that and like keep it cool and keep it at a low decibel.
Yeah.
So, it's hard though.
It is so hard. And that's a great example of like just an everyday thing that is like so infuriating. And you're just like, how could you not, like, you have one job, right? Like,
yeah, exactly. And it's once a week, mind you.
It's once a week, right? Like your life is so easy. And so it's easy for us to think that way, to be like, your life is so easy. Like, this isn't hard. Why are you like, why can't you just do this? Okay. Back it up, right? That's minimizing. We're denying their experience. We're minimizing their experience. We're blaming them for this thing. Like, okay, that's going to escalate like nobody's business.
Right.
So stop. I'm going to go. And I want you to understand that this is what I need you to do. And I'll be right back. Right. So like, they know that you're going to come back. They know that you're not abandoning them. They know that like, but you have to make those things explicit, because believe it or not, kids don't explicitly know that you're not going to abandon them.
Right.
That's not information that they just carry with them. They don't know that.
Right.
They need to be told that sometimes.
Yeah. They don't know we have laws against that kind of stuff. They don't know.
Right. They don't know. They don't know that we're not going to just like leave them someday and be out and be done. So like, we have to be clear, like, hey, I'm going to come right back. And I want to see it different when I get back. Right. That's a good way to approach the situation. Another thing is like when a kid is throwing a temper tantrum, and I say this 1,000 times a day, like we say to the kid, wow, I see you're upset. Let's find some way to calm down. Let's blow bubbles. Let's jog in place. Let's, run in a circle. Let's get our wiggles out. Like, let's, move our bodies. Let's change our minds. But I can see that you're really upset. We can't just say stop.
Right.
That doesn't work.
But what a cool thing too, because fast forward a few decades into being an adult, and this kind of goes into my next question for you actually, is like, now we're teaching them to recognize these changes in their bodies and in their emotions, right? How many adults do we know that don't even recognize that? Emotions
are hard.
Yeah.
So like we have to have this we call it emotions literacy or feelings literacy. So we have to be able to name it, like Dr. Dan Siegel, who I talk about all the time, in one of his books, I can't remember which one, it says, name it to tame it. And so when you can, and then Mr. Rogers used to say, if it's mentionable, it's manageable, right?
Oh,
so
yes.
you say the thing like, I'm feeling like, that's when you say, I can see that you're upset, right? So like upset is a good enough word for right now. And then as they learn about their different feelings, like, do you feel angry? Not, I wouldn't ask this in the moment necessarily, but like just learning over time, have you felt angry? Have you felt sad? Have you felt scared? Have you felt like these basic happy, excited, joyful, these basic emotions? If we can teach them about these, then they can name it when they feel it. And they don't have to scream to be heard. That's the other thing. Like, I'm a yeller. I don't think my mom was a yeller. Like, I don't remember being yelled at as a kid as much. I remember, that's not really where I get my yelling. I get my yelling from a need to be heard.
Ah, interesting.
Right? So because I'm not, I don't have the experience of being able to really express a lot of emotion. I was an emotional person, an emotional kid, an emotional, volatile kid. I had a high temper. I would throw a temper tantrum. I remember my family like videotaping a temper tantrum one time. And like, I was so mad. I can like remember this videotape, and I'm like so mad that they're taping me, and I'm like hiding in between the refrigerator and like the cabinet or whatever. And it's like, I was just like, I see myself in that tape. Like, I'm so upset. And like what I really needed in that moment. And that's like a normal thing for parents to do. I don't recommend it. Like, don't do that. But like, it's not like, it wasn't abusive or anything. It's just a thing that sticks out to me.
It's all over TikTok.
Right. Well, now this is more
a little
than
while
30 years ago. They didn't have, right. Like, let's just say more than, so thank goodness that it wasn't on TikTok or it ended up on Jimmy Kimmel. But
yeah, right.
The point is, in that moment, what I needed was to be understood. I needed somebody to come to me and be like, hey, I see you're upset. Like, it's okay for you to be upset. I don't even know why I was upset. It was probably something dumb, right?
Yeah.
Like something little that like adults didn't care about. Like, I'm sure it was like annoying that I was throwing a temper tantrum, but like what I really needed is, instead of to be like mocked, I needed to have been seen. And so I'm not saying that's like the root of all of my yelling or something, but like I was an emotional kid, and I don't know that I felt necessarily heard. And in the 80s, that wasn't really how we parented in the 80s. Like, there wasn't a lot of like feelings vocabulary. There wasn't it was very much like, so like, I think it's a product of my generation too, right? Like, that's just, I mean, in the 80s, like the books on psychology and like behavioralism are totally the opposite of anything I would tell a parent today. But like, that's what was told to us, right? Like, that's what we had. So anyhow, when we don't get those needs met, like, they will come back to us later. They will like continue to show up. And so now, if I get really upset, I'll still yell. It just takes me longer to get there because I've done my own work, a lot of it.
And you recognize when you're getting there, right?
Right. And I can see now, oh, I'm getting really upset. And then I have to stop, and I can ground myself. Like, I'm getting really frustrated. I can give an example. I was trying to wake one of my kids up. I was shaking him, and I was being annoying, right? Because I needed him to wake up. And so I wouldn't stop shaking him until he woke up. So I like his arm, right? Like, and he's 17. Okay. Like, just to set the groundwork. So I'm shaking his arm, whatever. Anyway, and he jerks, and he looks at me, and he gives me this look, and the look activated something in me. I got so furious because of the way that he looked at me, when really, like, I was being annoying. Like, he was annoyed.
Yeah.
But I don't know what, something triggered in me, and I noticed it right away. And I had to like back up and be like, it's time to wake up. Like, but it was hard. I felt it in my body, and like, I had this reaction. And years ago, like before I had therapy, I would have lost it, and that wouldn't have been helpful either.
Well, no, because then now we're passing it down, right? Because now what are we teaching?
Right. We're teaching like that I can annoy him in order to like wake him up. But if he reacts to my annoyance, like that's not okay to do. And he didn't even do it. It was his eyeballs. Like he didn't do anything. He just,
And he was probably just waking up too and didn't even know.
Like, what the heck are you doing? Like, stop
Yeah.
it. Right. And so, we have to check ourselves and we have to check in with ourselves and recognize when we're being triggered and when we're having these reactions so that we don't, force that onto our kid.
Mm-hmm. So when we have, so you mentioned 3 different attachment styles. So or 4. You mentioned avoidant, you mentioned anxious, and then you mentioned they could both be together.
Yeah, you get both combination. That's a fun one.
That's tricky.
Right.
And then you mentioned normal, or what did you say? Or
secure.
Safe, secure. There we go. Yeah. So back to the anxious and avoidant, I assume that a lot of those characteristics they don't necessarily work for people in communication and in their lives and that kind of thing, right? Can we talk about what that looks like so somebody could potentially recognize that in themselves?
Yeah. So someone with an avoidant attachment style might be, they might not respond to messages right away. They withhold connection when they're feeling distressed. So if they offer the silent treatment, or, we won't say we're passive aggressive. So we don't say what's really wrong. We say everything's fine. We bottle everything up and say it's fine, it's fine, it's fine until it's not. And then we explode. We push people away when we feel scared. We push them away and we don't let people get close to us. We have trust issues. We don't feel like the person understands us. We don't feel like our person can ever possibly understand or like feel the way that we feel. It's avoidant, just like it sounds. Like we avoid the intimacy and the connection that we have in our relationships. And so an anxious avoidant or an anxious person is going to be more dependent, more clingy, more needy, always needing the other person to be okay in order for us to be okay. Whereas avoidant is like, I don't even have tolerance for your emotions at all. Right. But an anxious person is going to be like, are you okay? How can I fix it? What can I do? Like people pleasing. I'm going to make sure that you're okay all the time. I feel distressed when you're not okay. My mood depends on your mood, basically. And so I'm always afraid of being abandoned. I'm always afraid of someone leaving me. I don't know that the person is really committed to me. I don't know that they're going to come back if they leave. So anxious avoidant is a combination of the two. So basically my anxiety and my dependence disgusts me and then I push everybody away. And so like, it's an internal conflict, right? So anxious avoidant is I'm disgusted by my own internal attachment needs. And so I'm pushing them away and I'm pushing my parts of myself away. And so I'm having this like fight within myself all the time about like, I need somebody, but I I love you, get away from me.
Yeah.
Right? Like I need you, but I can't tolerate your closeness. Like I need you to tell me that, you love me, but when you tell me you love me, I don't believe you. And I am going to say, but you don't really love me because, if you did, then you wouldn't have ever done this thing to me that you did that hurt my feelings. Right. So it's just this constant internal conflict of like, does this person really can't ever love me? I'm unlovable. And so I'm going to push them away because I'm not even good enough for them. Right. I don't even want them to have to deal with me. I'm not good enough. They deserve better. I just mess everything up. Anybody who gets with me is going to get messed up because I'm so messed up. Those kinds of thoughts.
So when and if we recognize these things in our kids, especially our younger kids, what are some ways that parents can, first of all, recognizing is a big deal. So yay for that part. But what's the next step?
we want to create security. You can build secure attachment within yourself even as an adult. Like, these things aren't fixed. They're learned, but they're not fixed. You can change them at any time, right? So if we see a kid who has, let's say, a lot of anxiety, like separation anxiety, fear of being abandoned a lot, or fear of being like something bad happening to the kid, to the adults, always checking in, like, are you okay? Are you okay? Are you okay? To the parents, right? Like, if that's like a constant thing, any small amount of any of these things, totally normal. It's when we're over, right? Like, over indexing on one side or the other is kind of when we notice, like, okay, so this is causing significant distress. Like, if it's causing significant distress that this kid is constantly worried about everything being okay, then there's a lot of anxiety, and that kid needs to learn secure base. That kid needs to learn how to be independent and do things on their own, and recognize that the adult is always going to be there for them. Mm-hmm. So a good exercise for this kid would be to learn to cook a meal, learn to do their own laundry, and learn to do things independently. Like, if they're old enough, walking to the grocery store to get, an ingredient, or going into the grocery store on their own and coming back and meeting you in the car, splitting up at the grocery store to go grab ingredients and then coming back together. Those are good exercises for anxious kids, because it's teaching them independence and capacity, because we have to believe in them in order for them to believe in themselves. And we have to start by believing in ourselves, first of all. But if somebody has anxious attachment as a kid, it's likely that adult is not a stable base.
Okay.
So the adult needs to be a stable base and needs to be confident and calm in their ability and believe in the child. They have to believe in the capacity of the child. There's a symptom of learned helplessness when we don't think that our kid is capable of anything, and therefore we don't let them do anything on their own. Mm-hmm. And so that's why those exercises are so helpful.
When you have cases where the parents are no longer together, so maybe kid is with one parent for X amount of days a week, and then kids with the other parent for X amount of days a week, as that single parent, mm-hmm. are there some things that you would suggest that single parent can do to sort of make that secure attachment that they have with them and their child sort of last through the time when they're not together? Mm-hmm. Does that make sense?
It does make sense. I mean, I think the best thing that we can do is to create routine. So, like, I'm going to call you every day at 7 or at 8 or at whatever time, right? Or bringing something from home so that they have it with you, like something that we both have one. Like, I have this bunny and you have this bunny, and we both have those. And so when we notice them, we can notice that we're with each other still. Like, just different things that, like, anchors that anchor the child to the home of concern, if they're anxious about going with the other parent.
Right.
But we want to encourage a healthy relationship between both parents. So this is another area where our attachment trauma can impact our kids hugely, is when we have to split our time.
Yeah.
Because we have a lot of feelings about that other parent. We have a lot of feelings about their capacity to be a good parent. We have a lot of feelings about how they treated us. It hurts our feelings when our kids love them. But we have to encourage a healthy relationship between both parents in order for the child to have that secure attachment.
I can see how a situation like this would probably throw somebody with anxious as a parent with mm-hmm. anxious attachment, kind of just throw that out the window, like, really make it kind of wacky when they're having to, now it's not their parenting time for mm-hmm. 3 days or 4 days or a week or whatever it is that the agreement is.
Yeah.
That probably shines a light on it if that particular parent is dealing with that kind of thing.
Yeah, absolutely. And we see that, right? Like we see, I don't want to give up the control. I don't know what's happening with this kid. I don't know if they're okay all the time,
Yeah.
and so I'm not okay. I'm not okay when they're gone. Well, the message that we're sending to the kid is that they need to be with me for me to be okay. And so when they're gone, now they're not okay because they're worried about us.
Mm-hmm.
So we have to be stable, and we have to say that we're confident that they're going to be okay at the other parent's house. And they can call us or they can communicate with us if they need to. But I know that they're going to be fine because they're going to have a great time, and then they're going to come back and we're going to have a great time.
Mm-hmm.
So we have to put all of our own stuff aside, all the stuff, even if it's true that about the other parent, right? Like whatever it is that we're feeling and thinking, we have to set that aside and say, this person is your parent and they love you and they are good enough, right? They're a good enough parent. We have to.
Mm-hmm.
And that's incredibly difficult. And then when the kid comes back and says how great they were and how wonderful their time was, we have to be excited for them.
Yeah. That's really important.
It's so important because if they don't get that, then we are damaging the kid. We're only hurting the kid. We're not hurting the partner or the ex-partner, whatever. We're hurting the kid.
Yeah. And yourself, really, because is the relationship then potentially suffering some damage, right?
Yeah, they will resent you. They will.
Yeah.
That is not respectable behavior to badmouth their parent. Because don't talk shit about my mom.
Right.
Don't talk shit about my dad. Like, nobody likes that.
Nobody likes that. Well, and as a child, they're a part of that parent.
Especially as a child. Yeah, they are. They're a part of them. They're not fully disconnected from them as a human, as an autonomous human being.
Right.
So they're internalizing that. Like, well, if she doesn't like him, maybe she doesn't like me.
Right.
But I like him. Is there something wrong with, like, what's wrong with me? I like her. What's wrong with me? If I like her and she doesn't like her or he doesn't like her, then what?
Mm-hmm.
It's very confusing and it's very distressing and it creates a ton of damage.
Well, right. And I feel like, and you're the expert on this, but I feel like a lot of times kids immediately blame themselves for things.
They do. Yeah. Because they are ingrained to believe that as a child, our development is such that we believe that we are at the center of everyone's universe. So everything is because of me.
Mm-hmm.
Like everything is, you're upset because of me. You're happy because of me. Everything is because of me. And so that's why we have to tell them specifically if we are having a bad time, like, hey, I'm having a hard day today and it's not because of you.
Mm-hmm.
I'm having a hard day today and it's not your fault. I'm excited to see you and I love you, but I'm stressed and that's not your fault. That's because of something else that's unrelated to you, right? Like we need to make sure that they know that when we're having a hard time, it's not because of them.
Otherwise, I feel like that, I mean, I love what you're saying, and I feel like that manifests into, like, as an adult, looking to others for our value and our worth and caring, what others are saying about us on social media or whatever. And I feel like that can be really debilitating.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because we're then saying, I need you to be okay for me to be okay. That carries into our adult relationships.
Yeah.
And that's a lot of pressure. Like as an adult, it's a lot of pressure to put on me to be okay all the time.
Yeah.
So that I can make sure your mood is stable. Like what?
Mm-hmm.
My stability isn't yours. You need to have your own.
Right. Right.
And that's what kids think when parents don't have the stability too. Right. And so our attachment style is going to translate to the kid. And if we're dismissive and if we don't value attachment and we don't value closeness and connection, then we're building an avoidant attachment style.
Mm-hmm.
So if we're dismissing the child all the time, like I can think of an example of like a kid coming home from school and saying like, oh, these other kids were mean to me. And then the parent saying like, well, what did you do to like deserve that? Right. Yeah. Like, what did you do? How did you start it? What did you do first? And then like they're looking for a reason, right? Which makes sense. And they're looking for like accountability, but what that's doing is like dismissing the kids' needs, saying like, well, you're not as important as as the other kids who actually are hurting you.
Yeah.
Like the fact that you're hurt is less important than why they hurt you and that you probably deserve to be hurt. That's what we're saying.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's going to create an avoidance strategy of like, well, I'm not going to seek help and connection if I'm just going to be rejected and dismissed.
Right. I mean, you said it. Parenting is just so wild.
It is.
It is. And then, you don't think of all of these little moments all the time. I mean, we probably do because we talk about it, but you don't think of all these little moments that like add up to these huge building blocks in their character, in their belief system, in their attachment trauma, in all of that.
Mm-hmm.
It's so much to be responsible for, as well as being responsible for yourself as an adult and dealing with all that.
Yeah, that's the thing, is we have to be responsible for ourselves as the adult in the room, as it's self-respect, right? It's giving yourself what you deserve. You deserve to feel stable.
Mm-hmm.
You deserve to not feel like everything just falls on you all the time.
Right.
You deserve to feel heard. You deserve to feel seen. You deserve to feel respected. And the first way to get that is to do it for yourself.
Yeah.
And if we're not modeling that, then like we talked about last time, then they're going to think that self-care is selfish. If we're not modeling caring for ourselves, then they're not going to recognize that that's a thing that's important to do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's just wild. It's wild how all these, I keep calling it little things. It's not really little things, but just these small chunks of time, that really equal everything.
Right. They all add up to an entire whole, fully functioning person.
Or not so much functioning. Right. We want fully functioning.
Yeah, it takes a relatively stable adult. And I'm not saying you have to be perfect, right? Like both of us are saying here how like we're not perfect.
Right.
I mess it up all the time.
Yeah.
Like regularly. And that's okay. And I go back and I say like, man, I'm really sorry. I reacted poorly in that situation. Like that's my bad, And when we can model that apology, that's where we have a repair.
Mm-hmm.
And so we're repairing attachment wounds in real time and teaching people that relationships are complicated. We're teaching our kids that people are complex and dynamic. And when they hurt us, they can repair that hurt. And when we are apologizing, we can be forgiven. And it's okay to forgive someone for hurting you.
And I'll say in hopes that it is better in the future. Like, because I don't think what you're saying is just go ahead and like do what you're gonna do and make mistakes, and as long as you say sorry, like it's cool, but
to the work.
Yeah, the work involved to avoid next time or to make it a more valuable interaction in the future.
Yeah, for sure. And do it for yourself, because as a mom, like I want you to feel like you can do it.
Yeah.
I don't want this ring of like this cycle of guilt and shame and blame running through you all the time. I don't want that for you as a mom.
Right.
You deserve better than that. You deserve to feel confident. You deserve to feel connected with your child. You deserve to feel like you're giving your child the life that they deserve.
Yeah. But it's almost like, and I know this isn't true, but it almost feels like, getting pregnant comes with a set of guilt. Just like comes with it. It's a package deal.
I think it kind of is. And that's so frustrating. I wish so much that we could undo this mom guilt. Because I know that we've had an episode on this, or maybe more than one. Yeah. We could have a whole podcast on mom guilt. But I wish that we could let go of the guilt so that we can remember our kids' experience is not that of shame on us. That's not what they're thinking all the time.
Right.
They're thinking, I love you. You're my person.
Mm-hmm.
You're the greatest.
Even imperfect.
Absolutely. And all I want is for you to love me back. And all I want is for you to show up for me and to be excited about me and think that I'm the coolest. That's all I want.
Mm-hmm.
I want you to be happy, and I want you to love me and make me feel special. There's no place for guilt in that.
Mm-hmm.
None.
Yet here we are.
I know. I know. And, I don't know exactly how the best way to relieve the guilt is, other than to remember that mistakes are okay. And that you can always repair. It's never too late. And you can do your own work.
I love it's never too late.
Yeah.
I love the saying, I think it's like from Buddhism, to be honest. You can always begin again.
Yes.
I saw that like 20 years ago, and I've remembered it through the years, and I'm pretty sure it's a Buddha quote.
Mm-hmm.
But I love the relief in that.
Yeah.
Like, our past, yes, it's our past, and yes, there's things to learn from, like all those things, but it doesn't necessarily define who we are now, right?
That's right. Because no matter what happened before, I can do something different right now.
Right.
Right this second. No matter what happened in the past, I can make any decision I want to right now. None of that defines me. It doesn't make me have to do things a certain way.
Right.
Now, is there a lot of like emotion in that? Yes, that we have to work through, like fear and shame and self-doubt, trust. It's a risk.
Yeah.
We're taking a risk by doing things differently. But it can pay off. What if everything works out?
Right. Or by like thinking of ourselves differently. That's a risk too, right? Because what if we let ourselves down? What if we really aren't that?
Right. Right. And we don't often think, what if it all works out?
Why?
I don't know. Well, I do know, because we have a survival bias. It's just a negativity bias because we're watching out for what bad thing could happen.
So then you focus on it.
Right.
Got it. That makes sense.
So that's why we kind of automatically do that a little bit, but doesn't mean we have to keep doing it.
Right.
Doesn't mean we have to go with that. We can have that be our first reaction, but we don't have to go with that. Just like I had it be my first reaction that I was like deeply offended and angry when my kid looked at me like that, but I didn't go with that.
Right.
I stopped and I said, well, that makes sense. Let me move forward in a pleasant and appropriate way.
Mm-hmm.
And I did.
So game time decisions kind of like they're okay. Like they can come into play here. We can stop these patterns even if the pattern has begun.
Yes. Yes, you can stop it at any time. You just do it different that one time. And then see what happens the next time. It's not like just because I want to do it differently this time, I'm not like, yes, I'm making a commitment to say like, I'm going to do my best to change, right? However, that doesn't mean I am now in this moment responsible for every future decision that I'm going to make. I'm only making one decision right now.
Right.
I'm not putting it on myself that if I make this decision now, I have to do it perfectly right every time after this. Right? That's too many. I can't make all those decisions right this second. I need to make just this one. I'm only making this decision right now.
Well, and I love that too, because that's also an old saying, right? Like just one thing at a time. Just take it one bite at a time. Just one day at a time. 1 minute at a time. 1 second at a time.
1 second at a time. Yes.
Yeah. You know? And I think there's a lot of power in that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Is there anything else about the topic? I mean, I know how we are, so I'm always like, I always giggle to myself whenever I ask you this question. But is there anything about the topic that you want to add into this episode that you think is important to note that we haven't throughout our conversation?
I think maybe explaining why it's so triggering, right? Like parenting is so triggering to our attachment system. So if we do have these wounds and they never showed up before, and now all of a sudden that I'm a parent, I'm like reactive. And I never had these attachment issues before. I've always had healthy relationships. Like I was fine. But now that I'm a parent, I have all this like attachment stuff going on, and like fear and anxiety and worry about my relationships. And like I'm insecure and I'm feeling, because parenting activates your attachment system because you are the secure base now. But if you have unresolved childhood attachment, then your adult attachment system isn't necessarily fully online. So then you're interacting with your child from your child's attachment system.
Mm.
And so we're seeing things through the lens of a child instead of seeing things through the lens of an adult.
Mm-hmm.
Parenting is triggering because a child needs you more than anything else needs you. And if you didn't get your needs met, then the child's needs will activate your resentment, your pain, your anger, your rage, your disappointment, all of those things. It will turn those on.
What about just your straight up not knowing how to do it? So that creates anxiety, because if somebody didn't do that for you, you're like, I don't know what to do with you. I don't know. You know, I've fed you. Isn't that all I have to do?
Right.
You know what I mean? So straight not
default.
knowing what to do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then we default to those patterns that we got when we were kids.
Mm-hmm.
And so if we don't know what to do, I always just make a connection, connect, attune, always connect. Don't dismiss, connect every time. If anybody's upset, if a kid's upset, connect and then go forward from there. Like, I see you, I'm with you. I see you're upset. I see I'm upset. We're together, connect.
Mm-hmm.
Always first.
I think that is giant right there. I marked it because it's going to be a great reel.
Yes.
Really, though, I mean, sound advice. And I think that I'm trying to think, I'm like running through all the relationships that an adult could have, like in my head, you know what I mean? I feel like that's got to be true for pretty much everything, like with your spouse, your boss, with your friends, with your neighbors, with your parents as an adult.
Yeah.
Like connect.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, it's okay if you need to have time to go and like I feel like I did a pretty good job this morning when I was like, okay, I'm gonna go because I need to have a minute.
Yeah.
Stay within my window. But I did come back
without connection.
Right. No, totally true.
You said, hey, when I come back, right? Like you made the connection before you left. You didn't just walk out. You didn't just leave.
Right.
That matters.
But I appreciate that. Thank you. And I agree. Like, I think that matters. I know that we're just speaking parent to child, but I think that matters kind of across the board. And I see a lot of that out there missing.
Mm-hmm.
This is a whole other episode, but somebody upsets you on social media. Wow. Like maybe what you assumed isn't even the thing. Like, find that out first. You know what I mean?
Totally. Yeah. You never know what's going on for somebody.
Right.
Like we talked about with the kids, like they could wake up on the wrong side of the bed. They could have stubbed their toe. They could have lost their homework. They could have whatever, right? You never know what's going on for somebody.
Well, right. And then I think another thing we forget is physical health things.
Right.
That we could have going on too, and if your body is taxed from certain things, then that's probably going to bleed into your ability to think and process appropriately, your
Yes.
ability to react and that kind of thing. So it's a whole other thing that not a lot of people, I feel like, really talk about, but it's all like connected, right?
It is all connected. It all goes towards like the resources your body and brain are using in order to get by in that moment.
Mm-hmm.
If your resources are taxed from all this other stuff, then you're not going to be able to really attune to that moment.
Right. Right. Well, I love it, as always. Fantastic topic. Love the conversation. Feel like we're just kind of hanging out together, in your living room or whatever.
I know.
They're always such good
It does
talks.
feel like that. I can't believe it's been an hour. Like,
I know.
I'm in shock right now how fast that went.
I know. I just want to tell everybody we are fantastic people to be stuck in an airport with, because if your flight is delayed, don't worry, we got you.
We got it covered.
We've been known to do such things. So thank you again for being here. And I always have your contact info in the show notes, but if you could share with our peeps, our following, our all of our sphere and friends out there that might be interested in chatting with you or contacting your practice, what's the best way to do that?
You can get me at www.benavieri.com. It's BENAVIERI.com.
Awesome. Quick and easy.
Quick and easy.
I love your website. I actually featured it in one of my other podcasts the other day. You probably know about that. And yeah, and it's really easy to navigate. So appreciate that.
Good. Okay. That's good feedback. I love that.
Yes. And I promoted your YouTube channel too, because I love your content. So
thanks.
Of course. And speaking of YouTube, guys, if you want to catch any of our previous episodes, hop on over to our YouTube channel. It is at Mom Nation USA. That's our handle. Scroll down just a little ways and you will see the mental wealth playlist. It's in beautiful, brilliant yellow. So it's very, very easy to spot. If you prefer the podcast style on your favorite podcast platform, do a quick search for Mom Nation Talk Radio. And there you can find us. Subscribe, like, download, rate, all of those things. And we will see you next time.
Yes. Thank you.
Bye-bye.